Monday, January 7th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, love, sex, and robots.
Let's do this. You'd think in New York City, the big one of the most important cities in the world, if not the most important, you could get a decent internet connection, but no.
Well, I would wager that while New York City is one of the most important cities in the world, your company is not one of the most important companies in the world.
It actually has nothing to do with our company. It has to do with the building. You see, when you're in New York City, you don't own a building. I mean, if you do own a building, then your company is a company that owns buildings and doesn't do anything else, right?
You know, I can't really make fun of this too much because I've actually been having similar issues at my company.
Yeah.
It's like, we're sitting around, we're like, all right, how can we get better wires into our business? And the answer was, well, how much are you willing to pay? And the answer to that was, anything! Anything! We just want it to be better, and there's no way.
Nope, because you're at the mercy of the building, so...
And it's not that you can't get it technologically. It's that the people who run the buildings in New York City just don't know jack all about technology.
And not only are we at the mercy of the building, we're also at the mercy of Verizon. Dun dun dun.
You know, in all my life, I've discovered that Verizon is the least shitty of the people you have to call if you've got like a T1 down or something.
And that's why they can afford to sell T1s but also lease out their copper to other people to sell T1s on, because you can buy a T1 from someone else who leases Verizon's copper and then sells it to you at a lower price, and you save money that way. Or you can buy a T1 from Verizon, but you know what? If you pay for a T1 from the people who actually own the copper, things are usually better for you. It's a racket, but it works out. But anyway, we have some like Ethernet loops to this company down the road, and it went out once and it went out twice, and now it went out again.
Wait a minute. I think you've done this opening bit before.
Maybe.
Talking about your internet being down at work and how you couldn't do anything.
But anyway, there's one of those companies that lets you aim a dish at their, antenna to do the direct link thing.
Yeah.
But the building won't let us put a dish on the roof, even though we already have a direct TV dish up there, because the building doesn't allow cable. There's no cable in the building.
Tell them it's another direct TV dish and paint it to look like one.
Yeah. But they're also doing like construction up there, so they don't want anyway. But also, they're just being a huge pain in the ass. And there's nobody that we can get fast internet from in that building, even though there's shit tons of bandwidth all around. We can't get it in that building because...
I tell you what, if we ever, that's the one thing, if we, go pro with this or whatever, and we end up just having some sort of computer shop here in Beacon, we can get some pretty damn fast internet, and it'll probably be pretty damn awesome.
Some fucking fiber or something. We can't get any fiber or anything. It's horrendous.
Man, it still bothers me that the Fios is, right there down the road.
Yep.
I can walk to where the Fios ends.
I'd get it in a second. All right.
But in other news, because I feel like we've talked about this before when your company's internet goes down, Scott and I, once again, ran afoul of a fat, indignant lady over the weekend.
You're talking about me talking about an opening bit that we've done before, and now you're talking about a fat, indignant lady?
That might have been intentional. I don't know.
Maybe.
But seriously, it was like we were up the road. Pretty much, I think this is the last time we're going to go up the road. I mean,
for a long time at least.
We always say up the road. And basically, we live in Beacon. Everything we need is in Beacon or on the internet. But there's residual things that...
Except for groceries, which are in Fishkill.
Yeah. Well, they exist in Beacon, but I would not consider that to be a grocery store.
I don't consider anything nearby to be a grocery store.
Well, something could be nearby and be a grocery store. However, what is nearby is not a grocery store and smells.
Yes.
So, I mean, the last time I drove to the mall was I tried to get some glasses during a blizzard, and I discovered that who doesn't go out during the blizzard?
Opticians.
So I show up, and there's the doctor. They're like, yeah, you can buy glasses, but you can't get a checkup. There's no doctors. So I paid 4 times more to just deal with it in the city. But then again, I didn't pay anything because I didn't care.
Yep.
But so we went up that road pretty much for the last time, and we went beyond the mall. We went
all the way up the road to the gaming store, which had nothing.
Yeah, we went in. We're like, oh, wow, yeah, this place hasn't changed much. Wow,
actually, it changed a lot, but they didn't have anything for us.
Remember we used to come here every month and play games with those guys? I wonder if they're still alive.
No, they're probably still alive, but I think their organized gaming days are over.
Yeah, kind of sad.
We'll probably see them at that Gaming for Hope, maybe.
Yeah, but we pretty much did everything we could do up the road. We went to a craft store to buy stuff to build a clock. Decided it wasn't
Failed.
worth it.
Yeah.
We got there and we're like, where's the clock shit? Where's the clock shit? We found the clock stuff. We're like, all right, all we have to do is buy the mechanisms and we can make our custom fuck it. And then we left.
Yeah. Those are not the kind of mechanisms I was looking for.
Yeah. So we're in this parking lot and I'm gonna leave and go back home. I didn't buy a ski jacket and thank you, internet. I go to EMS, I buy a ski mask, buy an Nalgene, buy all this winter hat because I realized
EMS is a good store.
I don't own a winter hat. I haven't owned a winter hat in years.
Aren't your ears cold?
No.
Why not?
Because, I don't know, they just don't get cold.
All right.
So, all right, I'm going to buy a ski jacket. Cheapest one they got's $300.
I bought mine there. It wasn't $300.
Wasn't a ski jacket.
Oh.
So, all right, I go online. I decide not to buy it. I look online. I can buy that exact same ski jacket for $200 on the internet.
Go, yeah.
Thank you, internet.
Retail stores, not so useful anymore.
Granted, the worst thing is I'm there, right? And I was gonna go skiing this coming weekend. I was all set to go skiing. I haven't skied in like.
It's a little warm to go skiing.
Well, you see, yeah, that's the thing. And now it's like 70 degrees, so skiing might not happen.
Fun.
But on the way out in the parking lot, it's a narrow parking lot. I was parked in a parking space. We get in the car, and there's this fat woman sitting in the car next to us.
SUV, by the way.
And she keeps like talking at us.
Well, she talked at me and she was like, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, what? And she's like, I had to crawl in through the passenger seat because, I couldn't get in this way. And what I should have said was, well, maybe if you weren't fat and driving an SUV, you wouldn't have a problem. I can get in this car just fine.
But instead, Scott gets in the car and he says,
I'm just like, well, talk to him. I'm not driving.
and he gets in the car. He's like, that lady wants you. And I'm like, what? So I like open my door and I stand up and I look to the right and I'm like, hello? And she's like, you parked too close to me. I couldn't get into my car. There wasn't enough space. I had to get in from the other side. So I look at her for a second and I'm about to just like drive away because I don't care. And she says it again, basically. So I stop and I look.
Now, keep in mind, this parking lot, the spots were really close together. Like, this parking lot was obviously old and not designed for large vehicles.
Oh, no, these were tiny parking spaces.
Very tiny
with.
and close together parking spaces.
So what I do is I just said, all right. And I look on both sides of my car and I walk around my car and I go, huh. And I turn to her and I say, well, I'm parked fully within the lines. I'm no closer to your car than I am to the car on the other side of me. So it's obviously not my problem. And I go to get back in the car and I can see her getting angry and her face starts turning red.
I think she was angry before we even showed up.
I think she was waiting for us to come back to try to yell at us.
She was definitely waiting for us to come.
And she must have been waiting a while though, because we ate lunch and we wandered around, but so we're sitting there.
No, we had lunch after that.
Oh yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, we weren't in there that long then. We just failed to buy clocks.
Yep.
And bought some paper.
We succeeded in getting paper.
Yeah, which we kind of needed.
We really needed.
So all right. So I just ignore her at this point. I go to get back in the car and she says, well, blah, 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 blah. If people could be polite, blah, 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 blah. I hope that someone does this to you, so blah, 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 blah. And she's getting louder and louder as I'm slowly, like, getting in the car, ignoring her, and closing the door. And I could see her still talking as I was driving away. That woman was the third most indignant person I have ever personally dealt with.
I've dealt with a lot more indignant people.
See, I haven't
but
dealt with them.
She was a fat, indignant lady.
The most indignant person I ever dealt with was waiting in line to go over the Lewiston Bridge into Canada.
Uh-huh.
That was the most indignant I've ever seen a human being.
What about that lady who blocked the hallway?
That lady was indignant, but at the same time, she was so furious when that guy said, well, maybe you could lose some weight, that she was just standing there seething, and she went from indignant into hilarious.
Indignity is hilarious.
I think that's the point.
All right.
All right, so what do you got in the news?
What happened in the news? Okay, so.
What happened? CES? Can we talk about CES?
Well, basically, there's so much new technology, it's sort of impossible to talk about anything.
Yeah, I'm going to buy that
unless
laptop.
we did the whole show on it. I mean, we could just go to Engadget. There's more stories posted on Engadget in the last 2 days than there have been like the last 2 months.
And
every story's like, new HD TV, new phone, new HD TV, new phone, new this, new that, new this, new that, new this and that. And a lot of it's cool. A lot of it's kind of Bill Gates made his last keynote. Not so exciting.
I heard it was a pretty good speech.
Yeah, I guess, for Bill Gates, normal, whatever.
Yeah, he's not the best speaker.
Yeah. I mean, basically, it's like, really all I care about is the new technology. Like, a lot of people reporting on the show itself, it's like, come on.
It's not like an anime con where cool things happen at the convention or
Yeah.
at the show.
Tell me about the things themselves and some of the things that are going on there.
Now, granted, if Steve Jobs somehow started choking on the new iPhone, that I might care about that.
Yeah, Apple doesn't do too much at CES.
Nah.
They do their Mac Worlds and their personal things.
And hey, the Apple Store's down.
Yeah.
Something's happening.
Oh no, we can't make a website that updates seamlessly without going down.
I think they do that on purpose to generate buzz.
I think they also do it to make it easier because Amazon doesn't seem to have a problem. They don't need to take their site down to update it.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing about not working. Like, when I worked at IBM, it was like, oh, we can't ever take anything down. But anytime you have a server that only has to be accessed during business hours, it is so great to just take that fucker down and do something to it.
It sure is.
Like, all right, I gotta update the database. Well, the database is now read-locked. The database is now down. The database is back up.
Yep.
As opposed to, shit, someone connected. Now everything went to hell.
Yep. So yeah, I thought that this week would just be full of CES news. And you know what? I think that as soon as the news starts to simmer down, it will boil and sediment, and the most important bits of news will arise to the top, and then we can discuss them. But right now, it's just this and 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 this. And if you actually care, you can go read Engadget or something.
All I can really say is,
or-
I think I found the laptop I am going to purchase, unless a very small PowerBook comes out.
Well, I don't
not
know.
PowerBook, MacBook Pro.
Well, when is the Macworld? Is pretty soon. The Macworld.
I'm gonna hold out until Macworld.
Yeah, it's in a little while.
And pretty much, if what I want comes out of Apple, I'm buying that. If it doesn't, I'm buying that other laptop.
Anyway, so here's the news. Ready?
No.
All right. No?
No.
Okay, I'm wait.
Okay, now I am.
Okay.
Okay.
This guy, he came from Canada to Vermont, I think.
Well, obviously, he's a
not all the
pedophile.
Not all the details of what happened here are listed, so I'm not sure.
Maybe I read the news already, but
Maybe. I don't have all the details of this news, but I have the most important parts that are relevant. The guy crossed the U.S.-Canadian border in some way, and in some way it involves Vermont. He was suspected of having the child prawns on the computer. I guess they had warrants to, search his business and all that, right? And so they did search his business and whatever. But I guess they didn't have enough evidence, right? And this guy, if he is having the child porns, it's not cool, and I don't condone that. But he was smart enough to use the PGP encryption to encrypt his stuff so that they couldn't, decrypt his drive and see what he had on there.
all right, great. So the police get the computer and say, hey, you've got, well, I'm surprised the police got to the point of realizing there was encryption in place.
Yeah, that's pretty...
He probably has that, PGP disk encryptor that encrypts the whole disk, and you have to put a password in to boot.
Maybe.
Because otherwise, there's no way they'd know.
It's got to be something like that.
Or they hired a forensics guy, like Katsu can do that stuff.
Yeah. But anyway, there was a subpoena from a grand jury that directed him to provide any passwords used with the laptop, right? Which sort of, and the judge, right? So he goes, hey, I'm not telling you the passwords. You can't make me, right? So the judge had to decide, does he have to give out the passwords or not? And of course, if you don't give out the passwords and the judge says you have to, you know what that is?
That's the Fifth Amendment?
Contempt.
Oh.
Yeah, but the judge said, no, you don't have to give the passwords. Now,
Because of the Fifth Amendment?
Exactly. You don't have to incriminate yourself, right? So I think this is pretty interesting in that let's say I have in my house something illegal, drugs, I don't know. I don't have drugs in the house except Tylenol, I guess, but let's pretend I do, okay? And the police have reasonable suspicion enough to get a warrant from a judge, and they want to search my house, and they have a warrant. They're allowed to search my house with a warrant. If I don't give them the key to my house, they can either force me to give them the key or bust the door down and just search my house. There's nothing that's legal, right?
Now, luckily for this guy, busting the door down to PGP is a little more difficult than busting down that shoddy-ass, hollow metal frame door you've got.
Right. Now, if basically this guy, they had a warrant to search his computer, and they did search his computer as much as they could, but the door on his computer was not opened by a physical object and could not be opened. Oh, I guess it could be opened by force, which if they did that would be fine. But
I have a feeling the statute of limitations would run out long before they decrypted his drive.
Exactly. It's so difficult to open by force that it's effectively unopenable, right? Unless they get incredibly lucky.
There was a Superman about that.
Was there?
Way back. I remember watching this where some guy committed some crime And what he did is he locked himself in an impenetrable box until the statute of limitations ran out.
How do you know this?
So Superman tried to bust in, right? Because they had this clock, and they're like, all right, the statute of limitations runs up in like 12 hours, Superman. Bust in there and get this guy. And Superman couldn't bust in. So we talked to some guy, I don't know who this guy was, who taught him about atoms and how he could phase through matter by making his atoms dodge the other atoms and like diffuse in.
Where did you read this?
I saw it.
Where?
It was Superman.
Where?
I saw Superman on TV.
Okay.
The old black and white Superman.
Black and white?
Yeah.
Live action?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nick at Night.
Oh, okay. I never saw that one. I saw the old cartoon one, which is in color. You know, do.
So Superman starts phasing through the wall, and he gets halfway in, and then the guy's like, "Oh crap, Superman's coming!" I don't know how he knew, and he's like, "Hey, Superman, what if you get stuck in that wall?" And Superman goes, "Ah, shit, you're right," and leaves.
Anyway,
see how they get him? You want to know how they get him?
I don't care.
You don't care? It's kind of funny.
All right.
So he comes out after the statute of limitations is up because he's got his atomic clock in there, and he's like, "All right, haha, I'm out. You can't arrest me." They arrest him anyway. Superman messed with his clock, and he came out 5 minutes early. Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, basically, I think this is pretty interesting because the Fifth Amendment, you don't have to, incriminate yourself. You can just shut up. You don't have to sit. You don't have to testify in court. You can just be silent. You don't have to say anything. Of course, anything you do say will be held against you, but no one can make you say anything in the U.S., right?
It's funny how that's such a... I mean, if you really think about it, that is such a strange right to give someone, that you have to tell the truth unless something you say is incriminating, and then you don't have to say anything.
Well, if you do, you can choose to shut up or talk. You can basically choose between truth and shutting up. You can't lie.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we don't need the Fifth Amendment. I'm just saying it's funny how it works out so well.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty interesting. What if I had a house, like a physical house, and the only way into the house was with information that only I knew, and I couldn't be forced to reveal that information to incriminate myself. I could be forced to reveal the information to incriminate someone else, though. So, yeah.
So as long as you murdered the guy who designed the password scheme and you buried his body in the house,
yeah, so it's
you're
weird.
all set.
I'm fully in favor of the Fifth Amendment because without it, it'll be horrible. It'll be like it's almost as bad as no habeas corpus. But on the other hand, having the Fifth Amendment in a world where we can use information to lock things and people, basically we can use information that is protected by law to seal up evidence and make it impossible to get at legally. It's easier to get away with things if you're smarter.
And think about this. This wasn't even that deniable encryption where you could give someone a key that works and decrypts data, but there's no way to prove beyond any doubt at all, or even any reasonable doubt, or even any unreasonable doubt, that there's more or less data in there. It's perfectly deniable.
Yep.
Within, n layers of decryption.
This was not the strongest, best encryption you could use for avoiding the law. There are better ways to do it. And the guy did it a sort of shoddy way, and he still got away with it.
See, the moral here is pretty simple.
On his Alienware laptop, which shows you how smart this guy is.
You should encrypt your important business.
Yeah, probably.
And if you're using Gmail, this won't hide it from Google, but it'll hide it from other people. Type HTTPS.
It does it on its own.
No, it doesn't. It goes back to HTTP after you log in.
Are you sure?
I sniffed it, unless it's changed.
I'll have to check on it.
Because I logged in at work today, actually.
You can also use Fire GPG to add Fire PGP.
GPG.
Fire GPG.
Not PGP, GPG.
To add encryption to your Gmails.
Yeah, don't use PGP, use GPG.
Exactly. Good God. All right, do a news.
So, I'm not going to talk about this in depth, partly because I think I want to do a whole show about it, but there's this article on Slashdot by some guy, Nicholas Carr, who wrote a book about it.
Nicholas Truck?
Nicholas Autobus?
Autobus?
That was pretty bad.
Shut up.
So, basically, the headline is the IT department dead? And I'm going to tell you right now.
As long as companies have computers, probably not.
The answer is no. Now, the thing is, this article is kind of weird. I have to read it again to really figure out, because it's pretty much just PR fluff to sell this book, and the book is somewhat inflammatory just to sell better, I think. But
there seems to be a lot of people writing inflammatory books just to sell them.
But it seems like the idea here is that computers are so good now, and you can centralize things with things like Google so much that you don't need IT support anymore. People can just do it all on their own. And the answer to that is
If they, I guess, he's right in a way in that it seems like people are so ignorant that if they just sort of did things their own way and figured out on their own,
except they wouldn't, not yet.
right? Then at least it's like right now we're in a situation where the IT departments are forcing the employees to do things the way that they know is best. But the employees are having hard time doing things the best way. They can't live up to that.
The thing is, most employees can't even do things at all.
I know. But if you just let them do it on their own,
know that nothing will get done.
Nothing will get done, or they'll just do it the best way they know how, which is the best that they would do it anyway.
No, it's actually far worse, because then all your data gets compromised with spyware and Trojans.
Exactly.
The company's fucked.
All those sorts of safeguards go away.
Pretty much, to sum my position up on this article, the things in it that are not bullshit are very few and far between. And basically, the only thing I can really agree with is that, yes, it's true that most companies really kind of do redundant IT work, or it's not really even IT work, it's computer work that they call IT. But a lot of companies invest a lot of money in technology infrastructure without necessarily understanding what that infrastructure actually does. And it's those poor and stupid uses of technology by people who don't know better that give the perception among a lot of employees and employers that technology and IT are a big money sink. Companies that use IT correctly to manage their information and their business processes save so much money, you couldn't even believe it. The problem is most people can't do that and aren't willing to pay people who know how to do it.
And are willing to learn how to do it, because it's not easy. It requires lots of changing the way you think about business and the way you do business. You have to change, and people fear change more than they fear anything else.
Yep, the sunk cost fallacy is probably the biggest thing holding back IT infrastructure in the entire world today.
Probably. The sunk cost fallacy is holding a lot of things back.
Yeah. Now, the sunk cost fallacy, I think, keeps a lot of people playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
I already made it to level 60.
It also keeps a lot of people from dropping out of school.
Yeah. And that's funny, but you know what? There are a lot of people at RIT who probably should have dropped out.
Yep.
We had some friends who were smart enough to drop out early on and go somewhere that was more suited to them. Things of the day. So, we like Futurama. The new Futurama was okay. Wasn't super great, but it was pretty good.
It was okay. It got some chuckles. I think the Family Guy movie was better than the Futurama movie. And
well,
as far as direct-to-video Fox cartoons go.
I think you're forgetting Everybody Loves Hypnotoad.
That was when the extra is better than the movie, that's not a good thing.
That was one of the defining moments in my life, is watching an entire episode of Everybody Loves Hypnotoad.
Are you serious?
Not ironically.
Are you serious?
Not best moments, defining moments. It defined a part of me.
I think that part of me was defined on an April Fool's Day many years past, and that this was just a reminder of that time.
I was not party to that, because while I caused that April Fool's Day, that momentous occasion for many other people, I did not suffer through it. I, in fact, was standing outside the room waiting for people to figure it out and congratulating them.
I didn't suffer through it, but I sat there sort of watching the others suffer through it.
But I watched Hypnotoad non-ironically.
Right.
Anyway, I'll make this quick. Remember when Bender brewed beer inside Bender Brow?
Yep, well, that was a good episode.
Someone made a Bender in which you can brew beer.
Does it have a poorly placed tap?
Possibly. No, it doesn't.
I know it does. Actually, I saw it.
Oh, I didn't actually look at it yet.
The tap is in quite a bad position.
Oh, wow. Yes. Okay. This is, however, extremely well done. Like, the level of quality is...
Too much effort. It reeks of effort. While
it reeks of effort, at the same time...
The kind of effort Bender would not expend.
It is really, really cool. Now, the only thing that worries me is I really, really hope that no one tries to have sex with it.
Okay. Anyway, this is a funny video that's gone around the internet. You've probably seen it already if you're paying attention to the internet, but maybe you haven't seen it. And the video is called You Suck at Photoshop #1.
Oh, you're doing this?
And basically some guy made a little Photoshop tutorial. And I thought, I wasn't quite sure what it was when I watched it. I just saw links that said, you suck at Photoshop. Click here.
And suck is spelled wrong in that kind of
Well,
internet
suck
lingo
isn't
way.
spelled wrong on the YouTube. So,
But all the posts I saw to it were SUJK.
well, it's SUCK on YouTube. But anyway.
Ah.
There's a video, and this guy, it's just a screencast of his Mac where he's got Photoshop and this other Adobe photo program, and he's talking over this screen capture, right? And he's basically going to demo how to do some stuff in Photoshop, and he sort of does. He taught me how to do stuff in Photoshop I didn't know how to do. I don't have Photoshop, though, so it doesn't matter. And it's pretty interesting.
It's
But
kind
at
of hilarious.
the same time, he's sort of in his Photoshop tutorial telling a story in the way, a humorous story. And I feel like this sort of joke has been done before, but I can't remember exactly when and where. And this is a good execution of this joke. And the humor is there. And if you want to be making the funnies, you should be watching this video.
I found this just utterly hilarious. I don't know what it is. It's for
I thought
some
it was
reason-
pretty funny. I didn't think it was utterly hilarious.
I think what made it hilarious for me is that I've always liked very kind of straight man humor. Like Stephen Wright always does that with a deadpan straight face.
I finished a dictionary.
Zebra did it.
Never did.
Bought some dehydrated water. Now I don't know what to add.
Yep.
Bought some spot remover. Now I can't find my dog. I love that sort of deadpan humor. And I think what makes something like doubly funny for me is if you could look at it and maybe if you weren't the brightest bulb or if you weren't paying attention or just it is conceivable that you would watch it and not realize it was a joke.
I think that's something that excellent humor does very well, is that it makes the person laughing at it feel smart. That, if you tell a joke, right, that anyone in the world will get the joke, but anyone who gets the joke feels like other people won't get the joke, whether they will or they won't, then it adds to the humor. It's like if I laugh at Penny Arcade and I know that only video game people understand it, it adds to the joke. So the best joke in the world is the inside joke, but the best joke in the world can't be an inside joke because it's funny to so few people. You need a joke where everyone feels like it's an inside joke, or it makes them feel smarter or better than other people, but it makes everyone feel that way. And that's the perfect joke.
It wasn't overdone. It wasn't overproduced. All the quips and all the humorous bits were extremely subtle. Like they were subtle.
He starts out real subtle and he gets less subtle as it goes on.
Yeah, but even then, it's in such a believable progression in terms of like you could see someone doing this not as a joke, but this is a joke, but yet there are people out there who feel like this and have done this sort of thing and it wasn't a joke.
Yep.
I hope it was a joke.
All right, main bit.
All right, so speaking of having sex with Bender,
oh good God,
Hungry Joe posted in the forums a while ago, and I'm surprised how little discussion this generated.
Well, you wanted to talk about this, so...
Well, the only reason I really wanted to talk about this is because Scott couldn't come up with anything better, and he agreed to it.
Yeah, well, I'm still, because you wanted to do this, it's up to you to get the discussion rolling.
All right, well, basically, this was what was posted in our forum. David Levy has a new book titled Love and Sex with Robots, in which he predicts that robot technology will allow for such human-like creations in the near future that we can fall in love with them. That the robots can, at least mimic, that they love us back, and that they will be viable sex partners. Now, I submit to you that this has already occurred, and my evidence is the dildo. It is a viable sex partner. It may not love you back, unless you have double D cells, but it is in fact a viable sex partner. You can have sex with it.
Yeah, I have a better evidence than that this has already happened.
Real dolls?
No, the moes. There are sick dudes out there that I do not condone, but they honestly, I think, these sicko people, they honestly fall in love with these animated fictional characters.
Now, we're not talking 4chan fapping. We're not talking someone masturbates to it. We're talking people actually have real, strong emotions toward moe characters in bad shows.
Yeah, these people actually have fictional characters, and while they may not physically have sex with a fictional character because it's just a drawing on a page.
Oh, you can print it out.
Yeah, they might print it out, or they might have a real.
I wasn't being serious. I don't think many people have printed out a piece of paper on their inkjet and then had sex with it.
No, but these people have like real dolls, and they have all sorts of sicko stuff that it creeps me out. I'm not comfortable with it, but there are people out there who are effectively falling in love with and having sex with things that are not human beings.
I was thinking of disturbing things. All right, so
yeah, it's all disturbing, but it's happening.
Of
and
course.
I really don't see having sex with, say, a robot sort of android that imitates a human being much different?
Well, I think there is definitely a separation. I mean, some people can make this distinction, some people don't, but a lot of people do very much separate sex and love or sex and emotion.
I separate them.
People will have sex.
Of course, they can go together, but they are two separate things.
And they will enjoy sex.
They are best together, sort of like chips and salsa. But you can just eat salsa, and you can just eat chips if you want to.
That was actually a pretty apt analogy.
Yeah.
All right, to continue this, of course, there is nothing new with this prediction. It's one of the oldest tropes in science fiction. You know that trope. Guy makes a robot, falls in love with the robot kills him because it doesn't actually love him back and it's just a machine. The end.
Every Ghost in the Shell story.
Yeah.
Well, half of them.
Well, the other half of Ghost in the Shell is it's not actually a machine, it's sentient.
Yeah,
what do we do?
75% of Masamune Shiro stories.
I can say one thing, though. 100% of Masamune Shiro stories have the big butt.
Yeah. Okay.
It's there.
Yeah.
That guy.
Let's skip the butts.
Shirotasm? If we'd done an episode on Shiro, just like as like the body of his works.
Just go on with what you're talking about. Stop trying to kill time.
I'm not trying to kill time. Mustn't kill time, boy. You must spend time. Must cherish it. I get $5 to go get loaded.
Loaded on sexy robots?
Right, so can we become so attached to a machine that we can be said to love it? Would we feel gratified if a machine mimicked loving us back?
If you're asking questions, why don't we answer them one at a time?
Do them one by one? All right.
Yeah.
So, let's do this in the royal we sense as humans. Can humans
royal we, so only kings, which includes me.
Can humans become so attached to machines that they can be said to love them? Now, I think the real tricky part here is that, people always assume, all right, it's either human or it isn't. It's either a machine or it's a human being. But what exactly is the line between sentience and not sentience?
Turing tests.
Turing tests?
I'm just picking something.
I know, because I submit that there are some, there have been several monkeys, well, apes at least, in history that could pass the Turing test.
All right.
So are they sentient?
Maybe.
So, well, maybe. You can't.
I don't know. I'm just shooting out there.
I know.
I'm not making a stance yet.
I mean, I think the Turing test is the closest we've got, but even then, that really only takes into account human intelligence or intelligence recognizable as exactly what we expect.
I know. Some incredible alien could come with advanced alien technology and still not understand the Turing test to be able to take it.
So, I guess, all right, is sentience the line? I mean, what is it? What makes having sex with a dildo different from having sex with, say, your real doll or your pool cleaner?
Well, if you're talking about sex alone, right, just the salsa, right? I don't know why sex is the salsa, but
it seems to fit because I wouldn't want to have sex with a chip, but having sex with salsa wouldn't be that bad unless it was habanero salsa.
You could just, if you sealed the tip, it wouldn't be so. Okay, anyway.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there. All right? If you're talking about just the salsa.
I just pictured everyone in the front row crew was thinking to themselves, I'm never fucking having salsa at Rim's house again.
Good, more for us. Untainted salsa. Of course, if they see us eating it, they'll know not to eat it. I mean, they know. They'll know it's safe to eat.
So where were you going with that?
They'll know it's safe to eat if we eat right. We have to eat it in secret so they don't know. They don't know which salsas are good and which ones are tainted. Anyway.
So what were you saying?
I was saying, if you're talking about just salsa, you got to get the... No. If you're talking about just salsa, just sex, right? Sex on its own is just... You're playing with parts of your body that happen to have a lot of nerve... You're stimulating nerve endings, and then your brain is releasing chemicals that make you feel good. And that's about it. So whatever way you make that happen, if that's your only goal it's basically, it's no different than snorting cocaine. Your brain releases chemicals that make you feel good because you stimulated nerve endings. I mean, actually, any way you stimulate those nerve endings, what's wrong with that? It doesn't matter how.
Because it's kind of relevant. Ghost in the Shell, there's a lot of talk in the manga about the idea that if you're a cyborg or if we have such technology to where we can understand the brain so well, instead of having physical sex, people can just stimulate each other's pleasure centers directly.
Yep.
And does that still count as salsa?
Yeah, I mean, it might be more fun if, say, someone else were stimulating your nerve endings in a unpredictable or superior fashion because, there are certain ways it's not easy to stimulate the nerve endings. They're pretty complex, and on your own, you can only do so many things. And with more people, you can do different things.
Everybody was gaga, deep in other people.
Yeah. And with a robot, the right kind of robot, maybe there'd be more possibilities available to you. But if you're just talking about nerve ending stimulation, anything goes, I guess.
There's actually a comic I remember. I don't remember if this was a Thin H line or if it was a Sunday Morning Coffee, but it was a lab and they made a sex bot. It was a classic anime kind of Maiko 2010, the perverted manga, not the cute anime. It's a robot you have sex with. Oh my god. And the scientists are, of course, men. And the woman scientist is like, what's wrong with you? This is disgusting. Why would you have sex with a machine? And then blah, 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 blah. And then that night she's using her dildo. And then she stops. She's like, wait a minute. Damn it.
Yep. All right. So now you're going to talk about the chips? You want to talk about the chips?
Maybe we should talk about the chips.
All right. So the thing with the chips, right, is that you basically have a strong emotional attachment to another person. That's considered normal, I guess, right?
Okay, well, it's love. Now, we can start, first, we have to define our terms. What is love?
It's love. It's the word love.
All you need is love.
No. Okay, right? But it's viewed by me and I guess other people that having a strong emotional attachment, right? Because the strongest emotional attachment people ever have is to people they fall in love with, right? That's pretty much what it comes down to. And you can have emotional attachments to other things, but if they're that strong, it's sort of disturbing. You know what I mean? Like some people might love their teddy bear, but if you love your teddy bear as much as you love your wife, that's sort of like, it's a little weird.
See, now it's easy to, it's kind of like with a lot of arguments. It's very easy to say, well, that's and that's just because that's Kiki and that's Booba. Just because there's such a stark comparison. But what about, say, the love for a pet versus the love for a fellow human being? Because now it's a lot closer in terms of, it's a living thing. It's probably intelligent to some degree. It can respond organically, that sort of thing. What about, again, it comes down to sentience. What's the line? Is love with a sentient being, shared love, different from one-way love with a non-sentient item?
Yeah, do you really care if someone else has someone having an emotional attachment to something that's not real, all right? I guess
the robot is most definitely real.
Right, but something that is not, a human or is not the same species, whatever, is disturbing. I don't know exactly why it's disturbing, and I have to think about it for a minute, and I can't really think if I'm saying stuff like this. But it is disturbing to others.
That's the thing. This kind of argument, or we're not really arguing, it's just kind of a debate because I don't really have a position.
Me either.
At all. But there's you can look at it from a purely subjective, well, I like this and I don't like this and this is okay and this isn't okay. And you can also kind of remove yourself from it and look at it from a purely clinical kind of, well, what exactly is the line? Like bestiality. There's a word I can throw out there since we're throwing out words.
Well, I think the problem with bestiality is that...
regardless of that, I know what you're going to say, but from a purely emotional or subjective stance, most people are disgusted by the idea of bestiality or a lot of things like that, and they wouldn't really think about exactly why it bothers them. There's kind of just this innate disgust for it. And yet at the same time, clinically, if you remove the emotion entirely, you can look at it and say, all right, well, obviously the non-sentient or the animal or whatever cannot give consent and blah, 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 abuse, danger. And there's two perspectives, both of which condemn it.
Yep.
What do you do when it's not so clear cut? What about a computer or an android or a robot that is, I wrote it in BASIC. I wrote it 100%. I know exactly how it works because I wrote the software. And someone else falls in love with it. Didn't they just fall in love with me by proxy or my programming skills?
I don't know. It's... people fall in love with other people's creations all the time. People have, someone made that anime, that Moe show. There's some artist, character designer, and then someone else fell in love with it. They didn't fall in love with the character designer. They didn't even know the character designer.
But maybe they did, because think about it. If you fall in love with an entity that was created wholly and predictably by a person, then you fall in love with something that was created entirely by that person's mind, and by proxy, that person's creative output.
So if I fall in love with someone, I fall in love with their mom?
Because the mom did not create unambiguously the person.
Now, what if we get in the future and we're genetically engineering children exactly the way we want them?
That's if it was down to the point where you programmed the brain 100%. Exactly. Because that's what I was saying. It's a cyborg that I programmed. I know the code. The code does not act randomly. It is deterministic. The reactions it gives, someone else could fall in love with it. But yet I know, well, it reacted that way. It hugged them because it saw that their pupils were dilated by this degree and that sort of thing.
But how do you explain when, say, there's a work of art that I may enjoy, yet the person who created that work of art, I do not like them, and that happens often?
Oh, that's
or
very
vice
easy.
versa, where I like someone,
like I said,
yet I don't like their art that
you
they
didn't
create.
fall in love with the person. You fell in love with the output of the person. What you fell in love with was a construct that person created.
Yep.
Actually, and even further, think about what's the line? What is love versus? I mean, I've had emotional attachment and attraction to a lot of characters in fiction. I've cried over people who never lived.
Yep.
Is that different than falling in love with something that didn't exist or only existed in someone else's mind? What's the line?
I guess there's some sort of, line that we sort of invent semantically that doesn't really have a provable real space, physical line that, when you are attached to something enough, then it suddenly becomes like, undying love and some holy thing.
I'm bound to you by chains that only omnipotence can break.
Right, and it's sort of like, no one can say exactly where the line is or whatever, but I guess that's what it's considered to be in popular opinion.
But all right, so someone falls in love with the line, the machine I made that I wrote in BASIC. Now let's say I made a machine that was a neural network, whatever, and it Ghost in the Shell style effectively could pass the Turing test. And as far as I could tell, I could not predict its reactions 100% anymore. And it effectively, as far as anyone can tell, is sentient. But it's a machine that I made.
All right, well, what if I make a real person, out of atoms because I have nanotechnology, and when I'm done, they're biologically identical to a, human being. They're in the same species and everything. They can even make babies one way or the other, depending on the gender I make it. And you fall in love with that. It's no different.
I think what it comes down to, my personal belief, is that love between any two entities. I can't say being because what's the difference between an organic, what's a being? But
a plant, these dendrophilias.
Between any N entities, I can't discriminate here. Any feelings of emotion between N entities of similar levels of sentience, I cannot find fault with them.
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out. It's hard to say there's something wrong with anything unless someone's getting hurt. I mean, sometimes this kind of stuff, there's someone getting hurt. Like one person loves someone else who isn't, and they're not loved back. Someone is in love with something and it's, it can't give consent because like an animal.
Yeah, if I love a cactus, that relationship is not going to end well.
That's not going to end well at all, no.
Not the Crushinator.
Or even what if a robot falls in love with a person and the person doesn't, love robots. They love people only and they're not attracted to robots.
I think there was a Tezuka about that.
Yeah.
Mayhaps.
Yes. And that the person could end up getting hurt by the crazed robot, which was incredibly powerful and strong.
Or maybe the robot is hurt by the person.
Maybe the robot is hurt by the person.
I guess I cannot find fault with beings of similar sentience sharing emotional attachment.
Now
as a result, if there are sentient machines or machines that are effectively sentient and someone has feelings for it, I can't look at that any differently than I look at someone having feelings for another human being.
Right. Now, here's another thing to look at, right? There's a lot of, basically, biologically, you're attracted to other things in your species, right? Because, evolution and things that were attracted, in any sort of non-asexual organism, right? Being biologically programmed to be attracted to sexually and emotionally to things that you can procreate with is sort of an advantage. That's sort of how, it worked out. If you didn't have that, you'd have, like men and women not wanting each other and then they wouldn't make babies and humans wouldn't be around anymore, right? Now, that gene or the genes that, cause that, are not present in everybody. And, you end up having some people who really can only have these feelings toward things in their own species, and some people can have it towards in their species and not. And some of this, stuff is, you even have, gender stuff going on, and some of this is biological, and some of it is not. And the question might be, is it good for the future of the species if we, take the selection pressure off of that? And now maybe one day in the future when robots are so much better and than people, because you just program the robot to be everything, the perfect thing for you to love, and we stop, we totally lose our attraction for people in the same species of, the opposite gender for procreating and whatnot.
But would it even matter if we had full control over our genetic destiny and we just programmed ourselves or even became machines?
But what if we had full control over robots, but not yet full control over genetics?
See, I think the fundamental question, and anytime this sort of issue comes up, just comes down to very simply, what is the seat of human consciousness? Because that determines the answers to a lot of these questions.
Like, what about that episode of Futurama where he's doing the robot?
And then everyone's doing robots, and if everyone's doing robots, then there's no more people?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
It is tricky.
And
and see, that's a situation where there could be some harm if everyone's doing robots and then we run out of people.
Oh, wow. I realized that looking at the rest of the questions here, we kind of answered most of them.
Did we? All right.
All right. Would we feel gratified if a machine mimicked loving us back, or would we realize that it was just acting in accordance with its programming?
Well, I think that some people would and some people wouldn't.
I mean, I think some people have a lot of difficulty understanding how other people... Fanboys are a good example of this. Running the RIT Anime Club, as the president, I had to be like the public face for the club. And a lot of people would congregate around in like the social areas of club, and I had to, kind of keep the peace and talk to everyone and be like, hey, you, how's it going? Hey, blah, blah, blah. But Scott and all my friends could tell when I was totally blowing someone off and ignoring what they were saying, but I was mimicking the right body posture and the right body language, and I was doing the things that basically trick another person into thinking that I'm engaged with them. There are a lot of things you can do if you want to, I guess, influence or affect the way someone perceives the way you speak just by using body language a certain way. It's not out of the realm that you could program a computer that did those same sorts of calculations.
But we're gonna have to, cross the uncanny valley of emotion there.
And I think all that takes is more computing power and more time.
Yep.
I mean, the uncanny valley is an interesting phenomenon, which I've read multiple articles asserting that the reason it exists is because things that are alien or foreign, we don't really have we don't have to worry about, because historically in the past of humanity, things that were very alien to us were different kinds of dangers. But things that were very similar or almost normal, but a little bit off, often indicated disease or malformation or problems like that. I mean, I saw a lot of studies where people were sickened and disgusted by certain kinds of images, and yet were not bothered at all by other very similar kinds of images. And the images that bothered them were in the uncanny valley and similar to things that cause disease.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, would a robot necessarily be mimicking, or could it possibly begin feeling? I don't know what the seat of human consciousness is, but I'm 40%, give or take, leaning toward the idea that my intelligence is just the emergent behavior of a complex system. And if that is the case, then robots can most definitely feel as much as I can.
Yeah.
Eventually. There's no reason they couldn't. There's no reason any sufficiently complex system couldn't be self-reflective in the same way that I am, especially if I give it a fusiform gyrus.
Yeah. But I guess it's this sort of idea that feelings are somehow special in some, like, there's some holy, what's the word? Sacred kind of thing. Feelings are just chemical, results of the emergent, thing for the complex system.
No, I mean, that's the case, because we don't, I mean, all we know is that, I feel emotions, humans feel emotions, and they're very powerful. And it's very difficult to separate yourself from the emotions you feel, and it's very difficult to clinically observe. I mean, let's say that someday we map the brain perfectly, and we're able to say without a doubt, this is where each emotion, this is how it forms and where it comes from. And here's how, look, I can make a device, you hit the button and it makes you angry. And you don't even know why. You hit the button and it makes you happy. We could understand it 100%. And if that sort of thing is possible, I don't know how a lot of people would deal with that knowledge.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people wouldn't believe it because it's very difficult to divorce yourself from your own perception of reality and kind of be self-reflective in that kind of clinical, objective way. Kind of like how it's very difficult for people to admit to their own inner failings to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right.
Blah, 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 blah. If Mr. Levy walked in on his spouse using a robot as a sex partner, would he be right to feel jealous or angry?
Well, I think there's sort of I guess another thing that's possibly biological, instinctual, that's been brought over the years that, you see, we've grown into being some sort of this monogamous relationship, at least humans have for the most part, sort of monogamous and whatnots. And
monogamous whatnots.
Monogamous whatnot. So, one man, one partner of some kind, and then you don't want the partner to be going with anyone else because then you feel like, hey, they love them more than they love me. Seeing something like that, it's like, oh, you want, everyone wants to have something all to themselves.
But then at the same time, we have friends, and I've met a lot of people in my life who, for good or bad, have transcended that and are in open or multifaceted relationships.
Yep.
And while many of them failed utterly, at the same time, many of them seem to be working very well.
I guess it's just, this is sort of a more general issue outside of the robots in that if you have a relationship with someone, if it's a real relationship, then, the terms of that relationship, will be like agreed upon. And if you're not able to agree on the terms of your relationship with someone, then what kind of relationship is that? That's not much going on there. It's not really going to work out if you can't even agree on something like that. So if one person's, wanting something different than the other person, then you're going to end up hurting someone. So don't make any promises that you're not going to keep.
Well, I think with this last question, and we'll also probably end on that because we've gone on a while and I'm kind of hungry.
Okay.
But I guess it also, with this, it comes down to, are they using the robot as a dildo for the salsa? Or are they using the robot for the chips?
Or both.
Or both. Because if someone's being jealous of the robot, if you're using it purely for the salsa, is like being jealous of a vibrator. If you're jealous of a vibrator, that's a little bit sad, I think.
Well, I mean, you'd like, the chips and the salsa go so well together that you'd like to think that, the salsa that you made goes to the chips the best.
Well, I think there is an unrelated issue that a lot of people aren't very good at making salsa. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable talking about it with possibly the people they also share chips with. I love this analogy. To the point that I think a lot of people could be having a lot better sex than they currently are, and I'll leave it at that. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.